Thank you very much. And Horshatuhi Hemmenya, Horshatuhi Makam Kanakrakat Vincent Medina, I Kish Kanakrokat Ashlip Makan Makemmenya Yarute Oakland Museum Tak Ne Tuhi. So hello everybody, my name is Vince Medina and I'm glad that we're all here together at the Oakland Museum on this beautiful day. The language that I'm speaking and that I'll be sharing a story in is called Chochenyo. And this is the oldest language of today, what we call Oakland. And it's been spoken here for thousands of years. It's been spoken here for us since the very beginning of time. We have stories about how on Tushtak, which is today what we call Mount Diablo, where we were given our ability to speak on our own, and that was one of the best gifts ever given to my ancestors. And I'm a part of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area, as well as the Heyday Rancheria, which I'm very grateful to be a part of. And the story that I'm going to share is a monster story. It's a story that had to adapt over time in order to survive. Not too different than how Ohlone people had to adapt in order to survive as well. But now the story is able to come to its truest sense of itself. It's able to be told again in Chochenyo. And very quickly, just to give you a some brief information about our language, for about 70 years, our language stopped having first language speakers as a result of colonization, as a result of the Spanish missions, as a result of the gold rush. But the last few speakers who remained, there were just two, Angela de los Colos and Jose Guzman, and they were in my family's village, our rancheria, which is about 20 miles to the east of here, where Pleasanton and Sonora is at today. And what those people did was they recorded as much as they could. They recorded their stories and songs, they recorded their vocabulary, they recorded everything that they could so that one day we could pick it up and relearn it and speak it again. And Malcolm Margolin, my good friend, he describes this as being as defying gravity, going against something and being able to make the impossible happen. And I know that our ancestors and Angela and Jose and all those people in my family who made sure their language would survive are proud of our community's efforts right now to speak our language a second time. So the story is called The Blood Monster, and it adapted, like I just said, from Chochenyo into Spanish, into English, and now it's told yet again in Chochenyo. And this connects to all of us, I think, because when a language stops being spoken, it's a dent into the collaborative human imagination, because languages have worldviews, languages have things that convey how people see themselves and how they see the world around them. And to me, it's very special to be up here, especially at this event, where we and myself as the oldest person of this area, not the oldest, but of the oldest people of this area, are able to share beauty and art and words with some of the most recent people who have arrived in California. And it's a beautiful thing because in our tradition, in our culture, we value beauty. This is a big part of our identities. And in the past, in the pre-contact world, with our baskets and our jewelry, our mannerisms and our stories, everything was carried on with beauty. And so it means a lot to be able to be here surrounded by so much beauty today. As I tell the story, I just want you to reflect and to think about the words, not so much the story itself, but the language that it's being told in is the language that has been heard here for so many generations and so many years. And I genuinely believe that when you hear the language, you actually hear the land of the Bay Area itself. Because Chochenyo, it's full of so many extremes, harsh sounds and soft sounds that are muddled together to form something absolutely beautiful. And when I look at the geography of the topography of the Bay Area, And for those who are familiar with the topography here in this area, you can think of the mountains to the west of the Central Valley and how they jet into the San Ramon Valley, and that's full of lush rivers and meadows, and which jets into the massive, enormous Mount Diablo, Tuxtlac, which jets back down and goes finally up into the East Bay Hills, which jets down again and goes into the flatlands in the interior of the East Bay. And in between all of that is the massive, still San Francisco Bay, which jets back up into the Santa Cruz Mountains, which jets down into the ocean. And those extremes, I think, are embedded within our language itself. And so as I speak and as I tell this story, I just would like you to think about those and to remember that this is the oldest language that Oakland has ever heard. Uyakishoroekne makwareb tak. Imhen payan hitkanakshe. Aye payan hitkanakshe amashmite ya payan Muwekma Ohlone. Imhen tuhi toekshikma watinekne makruet ka yara ka talkin aye ki payan hitkanakshe ya watinsin. Makweteshnesa ki mayan ki payan hitkanakshe ya watinesa makruet ka ana hintrok nesa. Aye mayan ki Yuwa tam chormon, nesa truekne. Mayanki makruet ka, hiti hemmen muwekma, aye mayanki aru kishikma, aitakishmak. Emrashu, nesa uksharit urakishima pamu. Neatakishmak kiekne mayan. Anna nesa urokishima erete pamu. Anna nesa. Ayamayan ki emrashu nesa urokishima pamu. Ne atakishma ki, okay. Nesa mayan watinekne arokishikma ayeki urokush uksharet nesa. Neatakishmak kikne. Anamayan nesa erete urakishima. Akwetam hemmen urakishima nesa. Mayan ki emrashu aitakishmak. Emrashu kanaketiupe ne urakishima. Ayane atash kikmak ki. Okay, why not? Nesa mayan watinekne ne tarishikma. Iki tarishikma. Watinekne kakun. Ay hemmentak ne potawish ennen. Ayane tarishikma kiekne. Mayan makenmak etnen nesa. Makenmak etnen aye erete pamun nesa. Pamun potewish. Nesa erete potewishikma. Nesa tam chormon. Aye mayan ki emrashu nesa. Yawatinek ne kakun. Aye hemmentak ne potewish. Aye ne tarishikma kikne. Okay, why not? Nesa mayan kikne ne pamu ne urushikma aye ne potewish etnen. Aye mayan hitikne payan hitkanakshe. Aye payan hitkanakshe ya watinekne makruet ka yara ka talkin. Yarute ya inutka ta halkin makruetka mayan rutekne imhen urush utin urush kapan urush ya watinekne makruetka aye payan hitkanakshe hitikne ne urakishima horpe potawish ennen horpe yukish aye payan hitkanakshe amakne ne urakishima amakne aye amakne ne pamu yarakat payan aye payan hitkanakshe horpe wetel aye nesa payan hitkanakshe yarashu ya inutka tamakruetka aye payan hitkanakshe akwetam hitikne makmuwekma aye ya muwekma hitikne aye kikne payan hitkanakshe aye kikne anan mayan ana payan hitkanakshe watikne makruet kanesa aye mayan ki akwetam chormon ekachokma akwetam chormon aye payan hitkanakshe watinekne ya muwekma watinekne tamak muwekma tamak ruetka aye hiti mak tupentak aye yarute mak tupentak wetel urukishima potawish ennen aye mayan chachapu ne ianu tamak tupentak aye chachapu aye nesa mayan rompeakne pap aye mayan hen wep erete homoshikima mayan yarute tripekma aye erekma yarute tamak ianu ne tupentak aye mayan rotekne nesa aye heshepekne erete homoshikima. The end.
Let me say a few words in Spanish here. How's that? Para dar un pequeño resumen de la introducción del cuento. El cuento se llama El monstruo de sangre. Y es un cuento que pasó de Chochenyo, que es el idioma de los Ohlone, al español primero, por los que llegaron de España, ¿no? Y después al idioma inglés, o sea, inglés, y después lo rescataron del inglés y todas las fuentes, ¿verdad? Para de nuevo contar ese cuento en el idioma de Chochenyo. Y además Vince nos dio su impresión de la idea de la inmigración. Dice que en su grupo de los Ohlone la belleza es lo máximo, es uno de los valores más importantes que hay. Y eso es lo que él ve entre los inmigrantes, entre toda la riqueza de cultura que se encuentra aquí en el área de la Bahía y en el estado de California. Así que eso es más o menos lo que lo contó a nosotros como para presentar su cuento. Pero como no hablo chochenyo, voy a preguntarle a Vince para decir algunas palabras sobre su cuento. So, could you give us, well, first of all, let me ask you, how did you learn the Chochenyo language? Since the last speaker was the 1930s, there was Guzman was one of the last speakers, as I recall. ¿Cómo es que aprendiste el idioma de Chochenyo? Was it and was it easy?
Uh, it, it wasn't easy, no, but I learned through old documentation. So the documentation that I was describing earlier is the primary force in what's been able to help me reconnect with the Chochenyo words. The two people that remained who left all of those words and all of that documentation for us, I'm sure we're doing so, like I said earlier, for that purpose that we could speak it again. And so I started doing work with the archives in Berkeley, and as well as listening to those old wax cylinder recordings. Also, because I wanted it to be a living language, there was sometimes had to be word creation that occurred. And I should say I'm not the only one in my tribe that's doing this. There's others as well who are doing this too. And go ahead.
Okay. La idea es entonces que le costó mucho trabajo, en breve, que buscó toda la documentación que habían dejado los antropólogos, los lingüistas, toda la gente que documentaron a la cultura y el idioma chochenyo. Entonces él fue a todos recursos como para entonces hacer activo el idioma chochenyo. Y eso es lo que quiere, que sea activo, que no sea una antigüedad, que sea algo de hoy en día, y por eso también puso un poco de su creatividad, aprendiendo cosas de otros idiomas relacionados, y entonces y ahora dice que él no es el único que está haciendo esto. Mucha gente dice que es el líder. People have characterized you as the leader of the movement to revitalize the Chochenyo language, but a lot of other people are doing this as well. So you say it's not easy though. How do you? Let me ask you this, because just to kind of move on here a little bit. How do you see the future? ¿Cómo ves el futuro del idioma chochenyo? Of the Chochenyo language?
Well, so it's not easy, but it's worth it. That's the most important force in my life, is that it's worth it. Nothing good comes easily, and knowing that we have speakers again for the first time in about 70 to 80 years, it means a whole lot. And so when it comes to looking at the current state of where we're in today, I feel nothing but optimistic and hopeful, because if, like that story, if we could adapt and change in order to survive, in that sense, we could also come back to our original and truest sense of ourself, which is rooted in the ancient, it's rooted in what's here in this part of the world, and it's something that would never go away. There's a phrase in Chochenyo that I love, and it's Makparet kahenwep irek nuhu ayer nihimu makpuyeshik maisha. And it means the ground turned to stone, but below and above, the spirits remain. And I think of this a lot because if you look around the Bay Area today, it physically is very, very, very much stone. It's concrete. But so long as we know our identities, we know our connection to this land, we know the importance of our ancestors and of our language, then none of that connection and none of that culture ever really goes away. It just gets strengthened and it comes back in force.
Bueno, en breve, Vince dijo que no fue nada de fácil aprender su idioma, pero eso no quiere decir que no valió la pena, porque valió la pena. Y eso es lo más importante, que sí vale la pena aprender, conservar y hacer activo su idioma. Y entonces habla de un dicho aquí de que cómo es que la tierra es de piedra, pero hay mucho espíritu encima, algo así, ¿verdad?
Yeah, above and below.
Yeah, above and below. So there's a lot of rock below, but there's a lot of spirit above. And how y cómo eso es, como describe más o menos la bahía, esta zona hoy en día, porque hay mucho concreto, mucho asfalto, todo eso, pero encima de todo eso, de la piedra, existe ese espíritu. Así que les pido que den un aplauso muy grande. Please give an applause to Vince Medina. Thank you so much, Vince.
It's a story that was recorded in my family's rancheria, like I said, over in Pleasanton, Sinol. And it's a story about values and morals. It's called The Blood Monster. And it's about this evil creature, this monster that loved to feast on the blood of Ohlone people. And so there were runners who, because he would go throughout the East Bay, throughout different villages all throughout the East Bay, and terrorize people, eat their blood. And before, one way that we could spread messages to long distances back then was through having runners who would come and spread messages from far off distances. So runners, they came to a large Ohlone village, and they told the Wetish, which is the headman, that the blood monster was on his way. So the Wetish consulted with Coyote, who was his best friend, and Coyote decided to make a plan. So Coyote went to some of the women in the village and asked them to make a lot of acorn soup, and then he went to some other women in the village and asked them to create as many watertight soup baskets as they could. And then he went to the guys and asked them to collect lots of red ochre to make red paint. So Coyote created this concoction of like fake blood using the acorn soup and the red paint and placed it in all these baskets on the main trail, the main road leading to this village. And so Blood Monster gets wind of it and starts eating. And as he eats, he gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And he enters the village, and the people are screaming and crying, and they're asking Coyote, who they trusted, why he would send Blood Monster straight into their village. But the Blood Monster passes all the people. And the largest basket of this fake blood is in the center of the roundhouse. And the roundhouse, if you've ever seen one, the door is very small. You kind of have to squat a little bit to get inside. And Coyote, what he did was he placed obsidian points and needles and all kinds of sharp things along the doorway and lined it with brush. And then so when the Blood Monster pushed his way in, he got stuck because he's so big at this point from eating all that fake blood. And he tries to make one last push, and then he pops. And he turns into 1,000 mosquitoes. And so the moral that was passed down to me is that you don't run away from your problems, is that you face your problems head on. You trust the people who are good to you, like Coyote, and then you also you stay moderate. So that means that if you because Blood Monster could have easily been a big problem, but when it was broken down piece by piece into mosquitoes, it could easily be swatted and be defeated. Yeah.
Yes.